Joining me now is the newly elected president of Amazon Labor Union, Connor Spence. So you were one of the original organizers that I interviewed there, I guess 2 years now, and you're now the president. So tell me, to people that don't only remember the victory, tell us what's been going on in the 2 years since, because obviously Amazon has not only been trying to invalidate your victory, but has basically been trying to do everything it can to not formally negotiate a contract with you at JFK 8.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for having me on, Jordan. We're super relieved. We just had the first elections for leadership we've ever had in our union since we formed it in 2021. It's been a struggle basically since we won the election because, a lot of us thought back then, I guess we had a lot more faith than we should have had in the legal system, in the NLRB, basically the government's ability, a huge corporation like Amazon, to come to the table to do what they're legally obligated to do, which is negotiate with the workers. Our union was put in a position where we were basically getting, we had to figure out how to put pressure on Amazon to make them come to the table. And so, in that time, we've really looked at what the Teamsters did at UPS and what UAW did with the big three automakers and how they approached negotiating those contracts. And it was really about creating pressure or creating a disruption. And that's the strategy that unions need to take on. And that was our big push within our reform call in that direction. And in order for us to even go in that direction to begin with, the union had to be highly democratic, highly participatory. Members had to be part of the decision-making process. If people are going to put things on the line and take action against the company, like the planning process, everybody needs to understand. We ran on that platform in this election, our reform caucus, and we won. And so it's a huge relief. We can now turn our attention entirely to taking on Amazon. And now also, in the time since we won the election, our union affiliated with the IBT, the Teamsters. And so this is a fresh start for us. And we have a lot that we got to do in the next coming days and weeks and months. But we're looking forward to really being able to take what we started 2 years ago, the Amazon organizing movement, and we didn't start it, but we were, one of the big victories that really launched things. And now we can take that to the next level and hopefully see a huge victory against Amazon pretty soon.
Yeah. And I think also, as in any labor struggle, it was the height of energy and unity when you won. But then for a lot of reasons, kind of the workers that won the union kind of fractured and, splintered. So you got to get that unity and energy and morale back where everyone's together with one mission, which is to get that contract. Can you talk about, obviously you just won the election, so you might not have a full answer, but to me, at a massive warehouse that, if I remember right, was like the size of 15 football fields, I mean, one of the main ways you're going to put pressure on Amazon to negotiate is a worker strike. Is that something, possibly a possibility down the road? Because Amazon's going to drag its feet unless you start hitting their bottom line. And this warehouse in particular in Staten Island is one of the most profitable for the company, as far as I remember, in the country.
Yeah, well, I don't think it's a possibility. I think it's an inevitability that, the only thing Amazon's going to respond to is direct action on the work floor, and not just in JFK 8, which is my facility, but across the country. One of the things we recognized pretty early on, at least our caucus did, was that we need a robust national organizing program because in our facility alone, we don't have enough leverage, even if we do go on strike. And so that's one of the benefits of being part of the IBT now. They have a national Amazon organizing division. There was just some really interesting action that happened in Kentucky at an air hub called KCVG, where the workers went on strike. and that disrupted production, and it really showed the workers there the power that we have to put pressure on the company and make demands and spell it out for people. Where does the money come from to begin with? It's from the work. It's from the work that we all do. And at the end of the day, if Amazon's not going to meet with us and negotiate fair terms and conditions of employment, then we can withhold our labor and stop things until they're ready to negotiate.
Right. And can you kind of talk about, because obviously when it was Christian, it seemed Christian was the president, it seemed like the focus was try to unionize as many warehouses as possible. But this is kind of like, all right, can't put the cart before the horse. We got to get a contract. And then, because obviously Starbucks was able to unionize, hundreds of cafes, but that's more 20 to 30 workers. This is, this is thousands of workers in one warehouse. So is the focus right now going to be predominantly on getting a contract at Staten Island and then, looking, to other warehouses?
Well, I think our view on it is that organizing JFK is the priority, and getting, it's our foothold. It's the beachhead that we've secured. And so we need to get to a level where we're extremely militant and strike ready in that warehouse. But I also think that there is a need to balance the national organizing, identifying other strategic choke points in the network, and organizing them as well. That's less so our priority, because now we're part of the Teamsters national Amazon division, and they've got organizers all over the country working on this. But the way that I think our caucus looks at it is, think about it from Amazon's perspective. If you start negotiating with JFK workers and you start making serious concessions around pay and benefits and whatever, they know that then overnight they're going to have union elections in every other warehouse. So that's part of their calculation. When they resist negotiating with us, it's because they see okay, well, whatever we give them at JFK, we might as well multiply it by 100, because we're going to have to give it to every other warehouse across the country. And that is part of their calculus for how they decide, well, is it even worth it to come to the table and make these concessions? And so we have to show them that, well, it's too late. It already is national. And the pressure is coming from warehouses nationally. That's our view on it.
And also, I'm going to get a little in the weeds, but I think it's important. You mentioned kind of the epiphany that you guys didn't know the law that well, which why would you? But the National Labor Relations Board, it's been better under Biden. At least it's been, they've ordered Starbucks and other companies to hire back workers that they illegally fired with back pay. They have I wouldn't say expedited, but at least greenlit more elections. But it's kind of a toothless agency. It doesn't have the power to compel Amazon to come to the table. I believe the National Labor Relations Act, which I believe is from the 30s, pretty outdated, and it's severely underfunded. And now you have Elon Musk and other, billionaire creeps basically trying to sue saying it's unconstitutional and get rid of the National Labor Relations Board. So what are your thoughts in terms of you're kind of up against Goliath with one hand behind your back, because the government agency that regulates this can only go so far.
Yeah, and I think that the NLRB has a role to play in all this. Obviously, I wish that there were, for a company like Amazon, we won the election, we were certified, there's a legal obligation for them to start negotiating. They're supposed to reach out to us, they're supposed to respond to our information requests and so on, and they don't do it. There's basically no penalty for that other than, well, we file a charge with the NLRB and then we go to court. And Amazon has basically infinite money for lawyers, so they can stall, they can appeal decisions, they can appeal up to the Supreme Court if they want, they probably will. It's just not, it shouldn't be the sole strategy of a labor organization to rely on the board to force Amazon to come to the table. Because then even if they had a magic wand and they could make Amazon start negotiating tomorrow, what leverage do we as workers have to force a concession unless there's some threat of a strike or the ability of the union to go on strike? And so that, like I said, that has to exist nationally. But I will say that the NLRB does have its place. We have won some victories going to court. Sometimes you get lucky, and the board will seek an injunction if someone's fired or if the company does something so egregious that it completely chills the organizing. But then also a lot of times, you're not lucky, and you don't get those kinds of remedies. And at the end of the day, the only thing you can really rely on is how organized you are on the shop floor.
Absolutely. And let's bring this back to the reason you need a union. It's fucking hot in Staten Island, New York. It's burning all over the country. They still don't have like a working air conditioning system in that warehouse. There's been an epidemic of people fainting and other things. You have fans, but that's just blowing back hot air. When you're at higher levels of the building, like higher floors, the heat rises up. And other major issues. I remember, when I was covering your union campaign, there was at least over 50 to 100 workers slept in their cars in that parking lot, making $20 an hour. So tell us about what's going on there right now that is problematic.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same thing. I remember we had this same conversation in 2021 about the heat. And, for taking that one issue as an example, every year Amazon said, "Oh, there's problems with the AC. It's so difficult to keep the building cool." And the reality is that, at least this is the case here on Staten Island. The warehouse is only allowed to draw so much power from the grid, and if they want to crank up the AC, there has to be a trade-off. They have to slow down the conveyor belts, but that means less work. That means less money, and so Amazon makes a very deliberate decision around, all right, well, okay, what's worth more to us here, the safety of the workers or meeting these productivity goals that we've set for ourselves? And they have some metric that says, okay, well, X amount of workers are suffering from these heat related issues or injuries or whatever, and this is within line for us. This is something we can be all right with. I guess once it exceeds a certain amount, well, then they start having those conversations. But it just goes to show everything for them is weighed against, how profitable is the operation. But it's still a lot of the same stuff. It's still the pay. When we're talking about pay 2 years ago, it's barely changed, and inflation has gotten so much worse. So it's like people are way worse off than they were 2 years ago. The injury rates are crazy. I think there was just a report that came out that the Bernie Sanders office put together that showed something like 1 in 10 workers basically has an OSHA reportable injury. But then if you include the non-OSHA reportable injuries during Prime Week, for instance, it's close to like half the workforce maintains some type of injury. So it's there's so much wrong with the way the operation is, and there's so many these are all opportunities for us to agitate, have conversations with the workers. But then also there's this aspect of, well, Amazon's a very high turnover company, and so people come in and it takes some time for them to see how it really is, and hopefully we can have those conversations before it's too late and they're fired or they're injured in some like irreparable way. But there's just so much pressure to move quickly and address these things.